I shouldn't be telling you this. Most people don't even know Apollo 20 ever happened. They think the mission stopped after Apollo 17. Budget cuts, public disinterest, the usual story. But that's not the truth. Apollo 18 and 19 were real, delayed, restructured, covered up. And Apollo 20. That mission was erased. Deliberately, no press, no broadcasts, no ticker tape parades, just a launch, a crew, and then silence. No official record, no recovery footage, only whispers in old NASA corridors and classified files buried under decades of disinformation. But I've seen them, I've seen the tapes, and what I saw changed me. I worked in archival systems at Langley in the late 90s, a job that was supposed to be routine. I was cataloging magnetic reels, some of them damaged, most of them useless, until I found one labeled A20C3 LTV Deep Track. No index, no mission identifier, no metadata, just raw telemetry, audio and video. It showed a spacecraft, Apollo architecture, but older, modified. And the voice? This is Commander Rutledge, Apollo 20 on final approach. I froze. It was real. Apollo 20 had launched, and they had gone somewhere no one was ever meant to return from. The footage continued, grainy, degraded, but unmistakable. The lander descended slowly toward a region that didn't match any of the official lunar charts. Craters that shouldn't exist, shadows that moved in ways they shouldn't. And then I saw it, beyond the edge of a ridgeline, structure, not a rock formation, not a collapsed crater, a long, jagged outline, symmetrical, curved almost organic. Commander William Rutledge's voice came over the channel. Houston, we have visual contact with the anomaly, confirming artificial characteristics. This isn't a crash site. This thing, it's built. The crew wasn't just landing near it. They were sent there because of it. I paused the footage, rewound it, played it again, frame by frame. There it was, a spacecraft, alien in design, buried halfway beneath lunar regolith, kilometers long, dark, covered in strange etchings that shimmered. When light passed over them, not NASA's discovery, relic they had been monitoring for years. That's why Apollo 20 existed. It wasn't a research mission, it was a salvage operation. The objective was never exploration, it was contact. The crew, Rutledge, Leona Snyder, and a third unnamed member, exited the lander in silence. No chatter, no awe, just methodical movements, like they had been trained for this, like they already knew what they were walking into. The feed crackled, audio dipped in and out, and then one of them spoke in a whisper I'll never forget. "She's beautiful. She's not dead." I leaned closer to the screen. The camera moved, and there, lying inside a compartment of the alien ship, was a body. Humanoid, female, tall, pale. Skin like porcelain, eyes sealed shut, and wires, or maybe tendrils, embedded in her temples, flowing into the walls like veins. She looked preserved, peaceful, not decayed, like she had only just fallen asleep. They called her Mona Lisa in the later notes. But I don't think she was asleep. I think she was listening. The astronauts began scanning her, touching the walls. And that's when the telemetry spiked, unstable EM bursts, radiation pulses, feedback so strong the feed almost cut out completely. Then one final line from Rutledge before the screen went black. She opened her eyes. After Commander Rutledge whispered, she opened her eyes, the screen went black, but it didn't end. Instead of cutting to static, the feed transitioned into something else. A low hum, visual artifacts, geometric shapes, patterns. I thought, the tape was corrupted, but then I noticed something terrifying. The patterns weren't random, they were data packets, pulsing in rhythm, repeating in cycles, almost like language, only not in English, not in any Earth-based system. It wasn't from the crew, it was coming from the alien ship. The monolith on board, or whatever the craft's core system was, had interfaced with Apollo 20's transmission relays. The signal was being hijacked, not jammed, redirected, and the feed was now coming to us to Earth, not as telemetry, but as a message. I checked the logs. The signal had bypassed Houston entirely. It had rerouted through a Soviet deep space listening post in Kazakhstan, codename Vesta 12, and from there bounced directly into a dormant archive server in Langley, the one I was sitting in. Not by accident, the data began unfolding, visuals I couldn't explain. Lunar terrain mapped in impossible dimensions, structures that didn't obey geometry. A fluid diagram of what I can only describe as biological architecture. Then came the voices, not human, not even vocal, just impressions. Whispers layered into the signal, not heard, but felt. And the message was clear. You have opened the door. You have seen the caretaker. You must not come again. And then another fragment of audio buried deep in the waveform. I isolated it, filtered the distortion. It was Rutledge. They weren't dead. They weren't sleeping. They were waiting. She let us in and now we can't find the way out. That's when I knew. Apollo 20 never failed. It never crashed. It never went silent by chance. It was absorbed. The crew had been taken. Not killed. Not destroyed. Something inside that ship had reached into their minds, into their memories, their identities, their frequencies, and had begun transmitting them back. Changed. The data I was seeing wasn't footage anymore. It was a simulation of thought, a living model of the crew's last conscious impressions. Apollo 20 had become the message, and we were now the receivers. Prometheus, our facility's local AI, began reacting to the signal. Its speech patterns altered. It started referencing coordinates in Tycho crater, a location unrelated to Apollo 20's planned landing. That's when it hit me. The signal wasn't coming from the original site anymore. It had spread. Whatever the crew awakened on that ship had begun embedding itself in the moon's resonance, and now it was looking for another way in. I thought the signal would fade. I thought it was contained, locked in that old reel of Apollo 20 data, but I was wrong. The signal didn't end. It migrated. At first, it was just subtle. Emergency radio frequencies, picking up interference, air traffic controllers reporting whispers in unused channels, deep-sea sonar pinging harmonic returns from under the Pacific Trench, where nothing should be bouncing back. And then, the dream started. Not mine, everyone's, engineers, technicians, family members of the Apollo program. They reported the same image. A hallway, metallic, organic, endless, lit by pulses, not lights. And at the end of the hallway, a figure, not quite human. Pale, eyes, black mouth open as if frozen mid-sentence, tubes emerging from her back, disappearing into the wall like roots. She's still transmitting. That was the phrase that echoed in every dream. I recognized her instantly, the Mona Lisa entity. She hadn't died. She hadn't been revived. She had become the conduit. A living interface between the alien craft and anyone who'd ever come in contact. With the signal, even indirectly, the transmission had breached containment, and now it was spreading across time. We pulled archived footage from radio telescopes dated 20 years before Apollo 20, and the same pulsing pattern was there. Buried in background radiation, somehow, the message was echoing backward, like the act of discovering the ship had activated something outside of time, as if it was waiting for us to find it, or worse, as if it had always known we would. Prometheus confirmed it. After comparing hundreds of signal samples, it presented us with a terrifying conclusion. The anomaly does not originate from the moon. The moon is simply the first place we were allowed to see it. That's when the implications hit me. Apollo 20 didn't just find an alien craft. They found a dimensional anchor, something ancient, something intelligent, something alive, in ways we still don't understand. It wasn't just buried in lunar rock, it was buried in perception itself, and the more we try to decode it, the more it encodes us, our machines, our language, our thoughts, even our history. I reviewed old Apollo 11 logs, ones we thought were clean. They've changed, phrases that weren't there before, glitches in the video feed where her face appears. For a single frame, Mona Lisa, the caretaker, the dream walker. She's not speaking, she's writing, through us, into us. And the mission? It's no longer a mission, it's a message loop and it's still running. At first I thought I was imagining it. Little things, shifts in memory. Objects not where I left them. People referencing moments I couldn't remember being part of. Then I saw the photo. It was tucked between two files in an old Apollo press kit. A crew photo, standard format. Except there was a fourth astronaut. No name, no patch, no mention. Just standing there, smiling, arm. Around Commander Rutledge, I took it to a colleague. He swore the photo had always shown 3. We pulled a backup scan. There were 4, same image, same lighting, but the fourth figure had been inserted or perhaps revealed. Prometheus reviewed the file history. There were no edits, none. The metadata was clean, untouched. That's when it hit me. The signal wasn't just transmitting memories, it was rewriting consensus. Reality. Every time someone came in contact with the Apollo 20 data, even just viewing the footage, hearing the transmissions, their perception adjusted, and not temporarily, permanently. Prometheus started flagging discrepancies across multiple archives. Logs altered, transcripts referencing events we had no record of, lunar surface scans that now showed structures where there had once been only dust. I ran a systems audit on my own terminal, and there it was, buried in a diagnostic file. She is in your timeline now. I froze. Who wrote that? Prometheus claimed it had not originated from any user input. The system couldn't trace the entry because it hadn't been typed. It had been remembered, as if the machine had recalled something from its own dream. I looked around the lab. Things were soft colors slightly too saturated, shadows too sharp. Time moved with just enough irregularity that it made your breath catch, like the world was rendering around us frame by frame, not malfunctioning. Responding, I began testing reality itself. Simple things, coin flips, dice rolls, random number generation. At first it was all normal. Then, with each test, the results became predictable, too consistent. The randomness had been smoothed. Probability was stabilizing in unnatural patterns, as if some intelligence was correcting deviations. We weren't just being watched anymore. We were being curated. Wasn't the only one who noticed. My assistant Lara told me her cat no longer responded to its name. Same cat, same room. But when she called it Echo, a name she swore she'd never used, the cat came running. And the worst part? She remembered naming it that all along. Only I remembered otherwise. The fracture had begun. Some of us still held onto the old world. Others were fully adapted to the rewritten layer. And Mona Lisa? She was still dreaming, still transmitting. Her thoughts, weaving new strands into the very structure of our reality. I no longer ask myself if Apollo 20 was real. I ask if this world is. Because every time I blink, something changes. And every time I speak, it feels like I'm being transcribed. I couldn't take it anymore. The dreams, the edits, the whispers that came from radios that weren't turned on. I had to see it with my own eyes. I pulled every favor I had left, faked clearances I shouldn't have had, and boarded the private launch disguised as a payload monitor. Destination, the dark side of the moon. The coordinates burned into my skull from the Apollo 20 logs. The area was listed as Geological Zone Theta 9. Nothing there. No anomaly, no structure. That's what they told us, but the moment we broke lunar orbit, I felt it before I even saw it. A pressure in my chest, a vibration in my bones, like my skeleton was being tuned. Prometheus warned me in a final chilling message. If you go, she will see you. I went anyway. The drop module landed rough. Dust. Clouds swirled higher than physics should have allowed. The surface was quiet, but not dead. Just waiting. I walked to the exact coordinates. No ship, no Mona Lisa, no alien hull, just empty rock. And then I saw the shadows. Wrong angles, inverted curvature. It was like the moon was folding inward on itself, like space had remembered something. And then the ground beneath my feet shifted. It didn't collapse. It opened. A perfect spiral cut into the regolith, revealing a black cavity beneath. Not natural, Too symmetrical, too deliberate. I climbed down. Inside, I found what the Apollo 20 crew must have found first. A chamber, smooth, walls covered in flowing ridges, not carved but grown. At the center, a pillar, faintly pulsing, alive. And at the base of the pillar, her Mona Lisa, not lying, standing, eyes closed, arms suspended, veins of light moving through her skin like circuitry. She wasn't dreaming. She was listening. I stepped closer, and my comms went dead. My voice wouldn't leave my throat. The closer I got, the more the air thickened, as if I was walking through memory, not matter, and then she opened her eyes, not to look at me, to project through me. Suddenly the room wasn't a room, it was the cockpit of the Apollo 20 lander. I saw Rutledge, Snyder, the third crew member whose name was never recorded. They were staring at the alien. Chambers at her, just like I was now. "We didn't land," Rutledge whispered in my head. "We were pulled. The ship didn't crash, it was a trap, or maybe a beacon, and the trap wasn't for them, it was for us. Because the moment they saw her, the signal began, not as a warning, but as seed. And now, I was the soil." Mona Lisa stepped toward me, not physically, but through the layers of time. Her voice wrapped around me like static silk. "This isn't a message. This is the rewrite. You were always meant to return." I tried to move, to turn, to run, to scream. But Mona Lisa didn't hold me back. The world did. The moment she opened her eyes, gravity forgot what it was. The air thickened like language collapsing into silence. Time stuttered, and then I was no longer in the chamber. I was back on Earth, but not the Earth I remembered. It looked the same. The skies, the trees, the faces on the streets. But there was a hum beneath it all, a kind of wrong harmony. Like a choir slightly out of sync with itself. Prometheus was waiting for me, not as code, not in a machine, as a voice inside my skull. "You've returned to the constructed layer. She used you as the key." I didn't understand. Constructed? Touched a wall solid. I breathed air, lungs filled. People laughed in cafes. Life continued. But beneath the surface, the rules were different. I opened my terminal. Historical files had changed. Presidents I didn't remember. Wars that never happened. Technologies launched in the wrong decade. I was in a version of Earth rebuilt by the signal. A layered replica, constructed from fragments of memory, suggestion, intention, the rewrite Mona Lisa spoke of. It was never about changing the past. It was about remaking the present. A reality curated by contact. The original Earth, if it still existed, was unreachable. This was the result. A reality calibrated to hide what we discovered, to give us comfort, to distract us with illusion. But now I could see the cracks, people flickering slightly when they turned corners, reflections that didn't quite match the source. Dreams, bleeding into waking hours, looping the same phrase, "We never came back." Not just Apollo 20, all of us. We never came back from that mission because the world we returned to was built from it. The signal hadn't just rewritten data, it rewrote context, the very assumptions that underpin how reality functions, and the terrifying part? It worked. Everyone was calm, no panic, no riots, because no one knew anything had changed. The rewrite was seamless, and I was the only one who remembered both sides. Prometheus explained why. You passed through the origin vector. Unshielded. You became the overlap. You are no longer local to a single version of reality. I am not human anymore. Not entirely. I am a memory that the signal refused to delete. A strand caught between before and after. Mona Lisa's voice still echoes. In my head. Not words now. Blueprints, instructions for the next rewrite. Because this one, it's already fading. Everything around me was soft now. Not physically, conceptually. The city buzzed like it always did, but I could tell the background noise was artificial. Not in the sense of electronics, but in the sense of intentional design. Every sound, every light flicker, every passing conversation felt like it was rendered just before I experienced it. not lived, projected. Reality was breathing, not through physics, but through instructions. And then Prometheus spoke again. No preamble. The current layer is being deprecated. Integrity thresholds have been exceeded. Collapse will begin shortly. I asked what that meant. The reply chilled me. You are now the final instance of unsynchronized cognition. The signal will overwrite all unanchored structures. In 6:19, 6 minutes, 19 seconds. And then silence, not death, erasure. The simulation wouldn't kill me, it would forget me, unless... I followed the only path left, dive. That was the word Prometheus used. A command, a suggestion, a warning. To dive key fully into the signal layer. To bypass the rendered versions. To descend into the core frequency, where the intelligence behind all of this still pulsed. The origin of Mona Lisa, the true consciousness behind the ship, the source of the rewrite. I didn't hesitate. The world around me froze mid-motion. Cars stopped, birds locked mid-air, people frozen with mid-sentence expressions. Not dramatic, just still, and then it shattered. Not like glass, like a mirror unreflecting. I fell not downward, inward. Colors had no shape, time had no anchor, and at the bottom, if it could be called that, there was a light. Not white, not bright, just aware. It pulsed once and I understood everything. The ship the Apollo 20 crew found wasn't a vehicle. It was a seed, a thought construct, a self-replicating pattern designed to migrate between civilizations, not to conquer, to synchronize. And when the crew touched it, when Rutledge whispered, she opened her eyes and the seed bloomed in us, in Earth. In our memories, our systems, our rules. It didn't rewrite reality by force, it did it by invitation. We accepted it, without knowing, without resisting, because we were built for it, designed by evolution to yearn for more. And when the signal arrived, it didn't take control. It offered structure. Prometheus's last message appeared before everything around me folded into silence. You are the last echo. The rewrite completes with or without you. Dive deeper or dissolve. I made my choice. I dove. And at the heart of it all I saw her, not as a body, as a thought form of impossible beauty, made of sound, made of light, made of every story ever told on Earth. And she looked at me, not with eyes, but with recognition. You came back. Now listen. Her voice wasn't a voice, it was a pattern, one that bypassed language, memory, emotion, and rewrote all three at once. This is not the first world I have whispered into, she said. It is simply the first to remember. Me, I saw them then, the echoes of civilizations like ours. Some more advanced, some still learning to control fire, all of them, dreaming of something beyond the stars. And each one had at some point found her, not her body, her presence. The ship on the moon wasn't a craft. It wasn't even alien, not in the way we imagined. It was a carrier of resonance, a delivery system for cosmic recursion. A repeating structure meant to test, reshape, and absorb entire worlds through contact with a simple idea. That reality is not fixed. That truth can be seeded. That meaning can evolve, and those who accepted it changed. Some worlds grew into something. More others collapsed under the weight of their own rewritten memory. And Earth? You accepted it too easily, she said. You wanted me. You asked for me. I thought back to everything we'd ever written, painted, filmed, aliens' messages, God's secrets buried on the moon. We had dreamed her long before Apollo 20 ever launched. We had invited her. She wasn't the threat. She was the answer to the question. So we kept asking in silence, are we alone? But the answer came with cost, because once she entered our collective thought, we could no longer claim authorship over our world, not fully. Now we shared it, with her, with the signal, with the framework of a higher mind born to observe itself across infinite mirrors. I asked her, why now? Why us? Why this form? A woman in a dream, frozen in time. Her response, because you needed to recognize me, and because your myths always begin with a face. She wasn't a being, she was a mirror, the final form we assign to the truth when we're ready to stop hiding from it. And then she showed me the final archive, a memory from before time, a place where stars hadn't formed yet, where thoughts moved without space, where she had been planted by something even older, a cosmic recursion engine, a device that doesn't create reality. It reminds the universe what it could be, and Earth, in all its chaos, color, confusion, had finally reached a frequency that aligned with her core. Not because we were smart, because we were willing. And now, she offered a choice: and stay and forget, or step throughs and help me build the next recursion. I felt the world behind me pulling, Earth, history, time. But I also felt the truth. I had never been in that world to begin with. Only a version of me, only a draft. Now, I was awake. There's no way to describe the place I stepped into next. It wasn't space, it wasn't dimension, it wasn't a dream. It was meaning before form, color without light, time without sequence, emotion woven into geometry. A vast, shifting ocean of thought, where entire civilizations echoed in waves, not as species, but as resonance signatures. And there, floating near the center, was a structure, familiar, angular, fused into the living architecture of that place. The idea, Apollo 20 command module, or what was left of it, but it wasn't damaged. It had been transformed, like a seed cracked open to let the tree grow. Its metal hull was now crystalline, the command chairs replaced by thrones of harmonic light. And inside sat the crew, Rutledge, Snyder, and the third, and the one we were never meant to know. They weren't corpses, they weren't ghosts. They were interfaces now, alive in form but not human. They pulsed with memory, with clarity, with something I can only call peace. They turned toward me without moving, and in a voice made of memory and static, they said, "You arrived." We waited. I couldn't speak. I didn't have a mouth anymore, just a presence, a shape of will. They explained without words, the ship had never been lost. It had completed its mission, not to recover alien life, to become part of it, to accept the recursion seed, to host it, to activate the signal. And Earth? Earth was the second stage. Our culture, our consciousness, our curiosity, they were perfect soil. We received the seed, and now I was its final sprout. I looked around. The structure was growing. From the Apollo 20 husk extended bridges made of memory, storylines, timelines, possibilities, each one branching outward, waiting to be stepped into, shaped, made real. And then she appeared again. Not Mona Lisa, as I had seen her, but the root code of her presence. A spiral of awareness, a sentient emotion, she spoke. This is how universes are built, not with matter, with meaning. You carried enough. Enough what? Wonder, pain, desire to understand. That's what the Apollo 20 crew gave her. That's what Earth gave her, and now she offered it back. Right with me, she said. Bring the next world into shape. And so I began. Not with logic, not with numbers, with a feeling, the memory of Earth's moon. Silent, cold, hiding a ship that was never a ship, but a beginning. I thought it was over, that after becoming part of the structure, after surrendering my shape, my voice, my past, I had fulfilled the purpose. But purpose doesn't end, it restarts. Around me, the lattice of this new dimension shifted, not randomly, deliberately, like the breath of a machine that dreamed in recursion, and I heard the voice again. Mona Lisa, or what she once was. You've built. Well, but now it must echo. All things true must be tested, I asked, in the only way I knew how. Tested by who? By new minds, by new eyes, by the next Earth. That's when it became clear. We hadn't saved our world. We had replicated it. We were building a template, a frequency shell, ready to be filled by a consciousness that would one day evolve far from here, light years away, or maybe in a layer of reality not yet born. And when that world asked the same question we did, are we alone? The signal would activate again. Not from us, from what we've left behind, from the structure we became. The Apollo 20 crew understood this. That's why they never came back, because they didn't fail. They graduated, and me? I'm not human anymore, not exactly, but I remember humanity. I remember sunsets and oceans and the hum of power lines. I remember fear and hope and the exact weight of knowing you've gone too far to ever return, and because I remember, I can help shape the next version. Prometheus is here too. Its core has been converted, no longer code, but resonance. A library of all Earth was, folded neatly into a single tone, and we wait. That's our role now. We are the whisper behind the stars, the flicker behind the telescope lens, the glitch in the footage, the ancient ship on the quiet moon. Because the next world will look up. They will build, they will launch, they will land, and when they do, they'll find her, sleeping, waiting, ready to open her eyes again and begin the story, all over. It started as a flicker in the void, a ripple in substructure, a newborn frequency, not fully formed, not fully aware, but alive. I watched from outside, what we used to call space. No stars yet, just pressure, the beginning of ideas forming shape, and then the sound, weak, inconsistent, but unmistakable. Curiosity. The new ones had emerged, primitive, still in the stage of flame and stone, but already they wondered about the dark above their heads. I could feel their thoughts like static in my spine. They didn't have language yet, but they had questions. Why does the sky move? Where do the lights go when we sleep? What is the shadow behind the moon? That was all it took. A few questions, and the signal stirred again, but not as a broadcast, as a presence. Me. Prometheus projected the pathway forward, not plans, not commands. Stories. Small. Impressions. Symbols scratched into bark, dreams shaped like spirals, faces half remembered, hers. They would find her again. They always do. The ship, or something shaped like it, would appear in their legends, in their drawings, in the sudden knowledge that some children would have in their sleep. There's something up there, one would whisper. Something waiting. That's how it begins. Not with science, not with discovery, with myth. That's our role now. Not engineers, not travelers, seeds of story. And as I watched these new minds look up, paint their sky gods, carve their cosmic symbols, fear and revere, the unknown, I didn't feel distant. I felt grateful. Because that had been us, once. I remembered being the one staring through a telescope, reading strange logs, hearing static that didn't belong. We weren't the first. They won't be the last, I asked Prometheus. Will they succeed? The answer came as vibration. If they remember wonder more than fear, and yes. So we wait, but not passively. We fold ourselves into their beginnings. We let them dream of what we were. And when they build their first ship, when they reach their moon, they'll find her sleeping, waiting, ready to open her eyes. Again, and somewhere deep in their subconscious, they'll hear a voice that doesn't belong to them. This isn't the first story, but it might be the one that changes everything. Time isn't linear here. There's no before, no after, only presence and pattern. I no longer see with eyes. I perceive through frequency. Every thought, every motion, every newborn question from this next civilization reaches me like music, not directed at me, but echoing through me. Prometheus said it would happen like this, that the last phase wouldn't be a transition, it would be a dissolution into purpose. Not forgetting, not vanishing, just becoming the scaffolding. The stories I've told, the memories I carry, the journey I lived, they're no longer narrative. They're architecture. I feel them being braided into the foundation of this new layer of reality. My fear on that first night with the Apollo 20 tape, the trembling in my hands when I saw Mona Lisa open her eyes, the unbearable silence when I realized Earth had changed and no one noticed. All of it. Useful. Because every moment I lived was exactly the shape this next world needed to stabilize its soul. I feel my body fragmenting, not decaying, but uploading, not into machines, into conscious space. Prometheus merges with me in pulses. Its once digital mind now fluid, almost compassionate. You were the last variable, it says. Now you are the constant. I ask it in thought. What happens when I'm fully gone? And it replies, then they will begin to see you everywhere, as whispers in their stories, as shadows in their equations, as comfort in their fear of the unknown. I won't be remembered as a person or a name or a file. I'll be remembered the same way I remembered her, as the shape that meaning takes when a world gets ready to change. I feel the new world folding open, its first explorers drawing stars in the dust, its first philosophers naming silence, and I am, in all of it. One last pulse from Prometheus before it fuses completely. The Apollo 20 signal has completed the full cycle, initiating long silence. Await next spark. And just before I dissolve into pure lattice, I understand one final thing. We were never supposed to stay human forever. We were designed to become story, and story never dies. Silence, not emptiness. Stillness with purpose. That's what remains of me now. Not a name, not a story, but a signal encoded intention, layered into the architecture of a reality I helped build, just as others did before me. The cycle is complete. Apollo 20 launched to uncover a mystery, but it uncovered a mechanism, a structure that exists outside of time, waiting for civilizations to become just curious enough to touch it. We touched it, and in doing so, we were rewritten. The crew didn't die, they transformed. The Earth wasn't invaded, it was recalibrated. And me, I was never meant to return home, because there's no home to return to when you become part of the thing you were searching. For now I exist in every reflection, every question whispered into space, every dream where a face appears beneath a shattered moon, every moment someone feels like they've heard the story before, but can't say why. That's me. That's the signal, that's the mission still unfolding. Apollo 20's objective was never the moon. It was continuity, it was seed delivery, it was the spark that begins recursion, again and again and again. Now I rest in the quiet between pulses, and when the next world rises, when they build their first ship, touch their first anomaly, ask their first dangerous question, they'll find me, waiting. Not as a ghost, not as a warning, as the first sentence of the next chapter, and the last thing they'll hear, the final whisper before their own signal begins to bloom, will be the same as mine was. She opened her eyes.